Amazing Maker podcast, where thinking and making are always interwoven. I'm Harriet, and I've been a knitter for over 40 years, and I'm always striving to become a better knitter, thinker, and maker. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about knitting habits, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Before we get started though, drop a comment down below. Do you have a good knitting habit that you're particularly proud of? Or if you're feeling like confessing, do you have a bad knitting habit that you'd really like to get rid of? One of the things I want to start by thinking about is why bad habits are so hard to break. Right? So Charles Duhigg has a book called, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, has a book called The Power of Habit. And one of the things he identifies is sort of the loop that creates habits, right? And so Duhigg points out that there's always a cue, C-U-E, right? There's a cue, there's a routine, and there's a reward, right? So habit loops are very simple, but the problem is, over time, they become very ingrained. If you can figure out a way to tie the habit you'd like to create to your sense of identity. We tend to think not in terms of identity, but in terms of outcome, right? So we tend to think, I want to be, smarter, prettier, thinner, who knows what, like whatever. Those are outcomes. It's also easier if we think about what our system is for creating these habits. And Clear stresses that thinking about the system rather than the goals, right? So not so much like, my goal is to lose 100 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever, but what is my process going to be? How am I going, what's the system that's going to be in place for that? And the last thing related to that is you have to have a plan, right? And Clear calls this an implementation intention, right? You kind of know specifically what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. So in a nutshell, Clear says that habits thrive under predictable circumstances. And so his advice for creating better habits is to work on creating the kind of predictable circumstances that will support you in that. And he suggests in particular that you use a formula, right? And so I'll put the formula on the screen here. It's I will insert behavior at insert the time and insert the location. Okay. So I've put it off long enough. The time has come for me to confess my own worst knitting habit. Here it is. I often don't swatch. I suspect a lot of you may be in the same boat with me, and I could spend a lot of time standing here justifying why I don't swatch, and I've thought through all of that. But the fact of the matter is that it is something that I know that I need to do much more frequently than I currently do. And so I've come up with an implementation intention for swatching, right? And one of the reasons that I don't like to swatch is that it is like a lot of people, I just want to get started on the project. But yeah, it would be a lot better for me to have the information about how a particular knitted fabric is going to work out if I swatch ahead of time. And so I've decided that my plan for trying to instill this new good swatching habit in me over the course of the next year is that I will swatch in the evenings when I'm watching whatever I happen to be watching, right? And so that's going to be a specific time that I've set aside in my evening knitting. I mean, won't always be swatching during my evening knitting, but if I know that I have a new sweater project on the horizon, then that's the time that I'm going to use for that. And one of the reasons that I picked that particular time is that a lot of times I've noticed that when I'm excited about starting a new project, it's often I've set it's a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning and I've got a little extra time on my hands and I kind of want to just dive into a pattern and get started. But most of the time in the evenings, I don't generally start new projects in the evenings. I'm generally working on something that's already underway. And this is something that Stephanie Pearl McPhee, the Yarn Harlot, also suggested at one time, is sort of think about the swatch as the kind of lead in so that once you want to start the next project, you're ready to do that. And so that's my implementation intention, and I am hoping to check back in here with another video in maybe 3 months and then 6 months and then a year to see if I can break this bad habit and get better about swatching and do it much more consistently and reap the benefits that come from that.